Can you hear the sound difference here? Hi everyone, new year, new racket, new age. Let's take a look at the new Yonex Astrox NextAge. Before we start, as a disclaimer, I want to say thank you to Yonex UK and YFood for supporting the production of this video. They're not sponsoring the video, but have provided me with the equipment and products which help make this review possible. Thank you. Right, let's get into the NextAge. First of all, I really like the flashes of green on top of the matte black paint job of the racket. You all know I love matte paint jobs, and this one turned out great. There are a few things that I've noticed with this NextAge that makes me think that Yonex is trying something new here. When I was informed of the racket, I was surprised to hear that Yonex is launching a new mini-series of a racket, but then grouped it underneath the Astrox range. I was slightly confused and obviously have lots of questions here. Does that mean we'll only be getting a NextAge with every single series, such as a Nanoflare NextAge or an Arc Saber NextAge, or will we eventually see an actual NextAge series down the line? It is interesting as this NextAge certainly does combine some of the features which are distinct to specific series. Maybe we'll see an Astrox NextAge 7 or 10 down the line? Who knows? Yonex also traditionally launches a new series or range with a made in Japan top end racket. They also normally start a racket with a 7 or 70 in terms of model numbers, but this isn't the case as this one comes straight out of Yonex Taiwan's plant and used a proprietary nanomesh Neo on the NextAge, which is again normally seen in Taiwan made Astrox Tour rackets too. This immediately tells me this is aimed at an intermediate to advanced level racket, but the key material which I'm excited about this racket is VDM, Vibration Dampening Mesh. Yonex has introduced VDM onto the tennis rackets for a while now and have only previously used it on their relatively head-like cousins such as the Nanoflare 800 LT, so it'll be interesting in this head-heavy racket. In any case, this is probably the only 80 Grommet Yonex Badminton racket I can remember, as I've certainly not seen one from Yonex before. The normally 72, 76 or 78 Grommet Badminton racket. Yonex's single pass Grommet systems are often grouped at the top of the racket between 2 and 10 o'clock region, but this NextAge has 3 sets of single pass grommets on the bottom of the racket around the 5 and 7 o'clock regions. Is this a problem for stringers? It's slightly more fiddly, but only slightly, and experienced stringers who are used to stringing rackets with 80 or more holes will be familiar with it, no problem. We still have a normal looking 22 main strings and 21 cross strings on this NextAge. I've also realised there's 5 rows of larger grommets which are also featured on previous Astrox frames such as the 88D Pro and 99 Pro, but they only had 4 rows. I'm a big fan of these larger grommets as I do believe they provide slightly better shuttle hold as they allow for the strings to move that little bit more. However, the funny thing is with these 5 rows of larger grommets, they are positioned around 3 to 4 o'clock and 8 to 9 o'clock on the frame, which is certainly lower than the usual hitting position for us. The sweet spot tends to be higher up on the racket face, so this is interesting. We'll find out if it provided any additional benefits in my playtest later on in this video. In addition to more grommets, there's also this nice looking T-joint grommet which is semi-transparent, and that looks really cool. It is thinner than the usual U-shaped T-joint grommet, but I can't see why this one isn't any good. All plus points thus far. For specs, this demo model that I have here with me is a 4UG5 model and is a head-heavy racket. It is rated as a medium stiff racket and has a shaft diameter of 7mm, which is identical to the Arc Saber 7 Pro, Nanoflare 700 and Astrox 77, just to name a few. It has a shaft length of 21.5cm and is connected to a handle which is 17cm long. In terms of frame, the NextAge has a frame height of 23.5cm and a width of 18.6cm, whilst having the top of it recessed. In terms of recess area, I really like how smooth the finish of the gradient is coming off the recessed to the non-recessed area around the 3 and 9 o'clock region on the frame. Good finishing right there. For frame thickness, the NextAge is certainly wider than the usual Astrox rackets at 11.3mm, and so if you want to protect this racket from chips and scratches, you can do so with this premium racket protection tape at ckYW.com/shop. For this thickness, the standard option will work very well. This frame reminds me a little of the Nanoflare 700 on the top area around the 2 and 10 o'clock region with wider flat edges on the side, but sharper features on the front. The frame's middle area are boxy, which reminds me of the Armortex of the old days, and the bottom is a combination of the two. Some of you will probably be asking if this is the same as Victor's dynamic sword design. It's not really, as they have subtle differences, but the concept principles are somewhat similar. In terms of stringing experience, it was fine as I strung it to my usual string and tension of Aerobite at 27 by 29 pounds, but the top of the racket did flex a little bit under tension. Not crazy by any means, but you don't want to go much higher than this, although the racket is rated to 28 pounds in this 4U model. Additionally, I realised halfway through stringing that the main strings are denser around the centre of the racket, whereas it's a lot wider closer to the edges or 3 and 9 o'clock of the racket. Gaps in between the crosses are much more consistent from the bottom all the way to the top. Only the mains vary in terms of density. I guess this will produce a slightly stiffer feeling, but also perhaps increased durability in the central area when there's more strings supporting each other there. And as soon as I finished stringing, the biggest thing I noticed immediately was how much different the strings sounded. Can you hear the difference here? It's going to be interesting in a bit. So before I go into how the NextAge actually feels on court, here's why I said Y-Food helped with the production of this video. You all know I have energy bars in my badminton bag, and I've been recently testing Y-Food's nutritionally complete bars and drinks, and thus far I'm enjoying them. The bars are super convenient to bring anywhere, and I find myself munching on them either during work or sometimes in between a session in the gym. Driving as well. Flavors were good and relatively sweet, but they do feel a bit rich after a while. It is quite a solid bar after all. I did encounter a problem when one of my friends asked me if they were vegan when I was munching away recently, and I couldn't tell on the spot as the bars I received were in German. I had a check, and Y-Foods do have a vegan section, so go check them out on the website. For the drinks, I've mostly had them after coming off court, so on review days like these, they are perfect. I do normally refuel and have something to eat coming off court anyways, so the Y-Food bottles were perfect as they have about 34 grams of protein per bottle. Pretty good for me. Thanks again to Y-Food for sending me these to try. So how does the NextAge play? The NextAge is certainly a head-heavy racket in my opinion, and the instant realization that it sounds different compared to other usual rackets. I'm not sure if the mic is able to pick up the difference in sound, but in person you'll hear this very nice damped hitting sound from the shuttle coming off your strings, especially from a smash. The best way for me to describe this would be very similar to a pro's smash. If you've been to watch professional badminton tournaments before and you realise the pop when the pros hit the smash, and that sound is certainly one of the best sounding things to my ears. The sound coming from the TV feed do not do this justice at all, and it's something you will immediately pick up at live events. This NextAge sounds like that. It produces a lower pitch, damped sound instead of the usual ping coming off the strings, especially on a power shot. With that, it made an immediate impression on me already, and this was with Aerobite as well. Imagine if it was strung with better sounding, louder strings such as the X-Volt 63 or 65. Leave a comment below if you are planning to try this combo or have already tried it. How does it feel or sound? In terms of actual feel, the NextAge is supposedly a medium stiff racket, but it actually felt alright. I personally prefer stiffer rackets, and you all know my normal racket is the Astrox 88D Pro, so this NextAge is slightly more flexible, probably closer to a Astrox 77 and 77 Pro. Review coming soon, so remember to subscribe. Swing speed was certainly slightly slower than Yonex's usual top-end super smooth, super fast rackets such as the Nanoflare 800, Astrox 88S Pro, and even the 88D Pro. But it's not slow by any means. You can feel a slight drag and that little boxy feeling when you're swinging, which is slightly similar to the Nanoflare 700's swing feel. But because the NextAge isn't a direct competitor with these top-of-the-line rackets and is actually holding up quite well on its own, it's a good sign on that front. Power shots felt good as you expect from a head-heavy racket, relatively easy on that front, but I'm still not hitting through. But this is normal as I'm just coming back from injury, and every day and every session is an improvement for me. I'd realised that because I'm nowhere near my previous best, any help I can leverage from a racket would be helpful, and the NextAge performed well. It's a relatively easy racket to play with in that sense. One thing that I did find I struggled with a little was the short, sharp front court shots. Perhaps it could be my bad technique and timing, but it might also be the slightly flexier shaft too. I was just missing that little bit of sharpness with the NextAge with these short, sharp shots. To be honest, if you ask me for a one-line summary of the NextAge and how it plays, I'd probably say this is a head-heavy version of the Nanoflare 700, and much cheaper too. I have to admit I do enjoy listening to the sound that comes off the strings, but I only notice it when others are playing with the racket. I don't really notice it when I'm playing with it. The damp feel is certainly an extra bonus too. I also shared the NextAge with some of my friends here, and here's what they have to say.
I think it's a great racket. It's a lot different to what I normally play with. Kind of quite balanced. It's very fast and good for driving and defending.
Your defense, you got a lot of shuttles back.
Yeah, I was surprised at how fast I was with it actually, because this is quite heavy. I didn't know how it was going to go, but yeah, it was quick and a lot more power than my usual racket.
I found it a little heavy and a little stiff for my liking. I'm really an intermediate player, not quite the level required to get the power out of it. When I hit it out the middle, it felt nice, but I need a more flexible and a lighter racket. Mine's super light. I think as an intermediate player, I find I was a bit late on the shuttle because it was a bit heavy. So my timing was a little bit off.
I really like that it's quite light, very light. I like my light rackets, so it means I can get quite good control and whip on them as well. So it's not too head heavy when I'm hitting. I'd have a lot of power overhead anyway, so lots of soft shots.
You say that.
Really nicely. Yeah, I feel it really nicely, which is very good.
I think it's perfect. Perfect for me when I'm looking for 2 new rackets as well. So I'll be buying it in January.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Using CKU. So check out.
Absolutely.
Not the racket for me. Be more a front court player. I need something quick, mobile.
This is head heavy.
Very much so. It's definitely a rear court smashy player who's got that timing and that forearm power to really drive through the racket. If you're a rear court player who's got big boy smash, I'd suggest it. Otherwise, I wouldn't. I think it needs that technique. It's a bit more advanced player as well. Yeah, it's just got that boxy. You really need that good timing and technique to bring out the power.
What I don't like about it is it almost feels like too light in some overhead shots. I can't feel the control of it because my racket almost swings too quickly. But apart from that, I got lots of net cords, so I think that's a big bonus.
Yeah, I enjoyed playing with it. All my shots seemed nice and crisp.
Yeah.
It just felt like it was coming off my racket a lot quicker, a lot cleaner, so a bit more powerful.
Yeah, it was really nice. It's like some of my old rackets, but it just feels a lot cleaner on the backhand. Defense, it was really good. It came off the racket nice and clean.
A few frames?
A few, definitely. Always frames.
But you enjoyed the racket?
Yeah, it was really good.
Anything you don't like about the racket?
No, I even like the paint work, so...
There we go. More green, right?
Yeah, more green, please.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
It's also got a great frame for those mishits.
Gotta make them all count.
Exactly.
Make them all count.
Got to pay for the whole racket, don't you?
Yeah, you've paid for it, might as well use it, right?
Yeah.
And like I've always mentioned, not all rackets will suit everyone, and it's important to find those that work for you. With that, it's good to be back, and I'll see you in the next one.